Back to the Future, Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines, #1. Now, I have the artist edition cover. I think there were like almost a dozen covers for this very first issue. Hopefully that shows up right, yeah. This one, it was definitely my favorite one, the artist edition cover, so I was really glad I got that. I still have to get the first one again because all the issues actually create one giant picture. And I found out, I thought there were going to be 5 issues. Apparently, there are only 4. So I realized that when I was reading through sort of like the back special message. But this was a really good first issue. It touches on a lot of different questions, like not just this first issue, but they mention in kind of the ending words where it's like, hey, these are some of the big questions that have always been asked about Back to the Future, like what happened, and some questions about the alternate timeline, how did Doc and Marty meet, and all this other stuff. And this first one, I think, does cover one of the most important questions that has probably been asked, which is, how did Doc and Marty actually meet each other? And I don't want to give any spoilers for this, so I'm not gonna go through like the story in detail or anything like that, so you guys can get it yourself and check it out. But it certainly answers it in a really cool way. It gives us this isn't really a spoiler or anything, but the story is told actually in between, or I technically, well, no, I guess technically it's in between the scene of Back to the Future Part 3 where Doc is left in the past and before he returns to the future, or the future from, of course, 1885. So it's actually him with Clara and his 2 kids, Jules and Vern, and I can't remember which of the 2 is younger. I believe Vern was the younger of the 2 sons because his name Jules Verne, so the first boy's name's Jules. But he's telling his son Vern the story of how, like exactly what's happening. So he kind of tells them in general about the future. He's mostly talking to his younger son. I'm assuming, based on some of the dialogue, that they've kind of explained it a little bit to their older son, but their younger son, at this point, he was only 3 years old. So he's kind of explaining things to him, like, he talks about how his family owned land and stuff, and they mention the fact that the Browns were called the Von Brauns and things like that. And we go into a little bit of backstory about the house and things like that, and then we go into the first time he met Marty, and it was really cool. There were a lot of great references, both through dialogue and visuals, as to, you know, kind of show off some of the older films and kind of call back to the 3 films. And it was really fun. It was cool to get that answer, and we get to see certain characters that you probably wouldn't expect. I know I didn't, but it was really cool. It was a nice way to tell that story, and it was fairly simple. It fit for both characters. It was a fairly, I believe it was a bit of a younger version of Marty. I actually should go back in here. They have the time, of course. They actually have the time as to what the date is and everything like that. And it was pretty cool. Like, I like getting to see Marty kind of go on this little adventure, and that leads him into knowing Doc Brown. Because Doc was, obviously, he's Doc Brown, so he's very famous. His family, and this is from the movies, he had that giant house, which he doesn't have anymore. And that's also somewhat explained, and there's kind of a cool thing that I never noticed in the movies, which, once again, I won't spoil that, because it was kind of a surprise for me. I was like, I never noticed when I was watching the films that that's what was happening. But it was really cool. Okay, it takes place in 1982, so it's only 3 years before, but it is still technically a slightly younger Marty. But it was really cool. I liked the first story. There are actually 2 in this first issue. I'm assuming that's how each one is going to be. But it was pretty fun. I really loved the first one. It gives the very first meeting of, Marty McFly and Dr. Emmett Brown. So I certainly love that. It was cool to even see the structure of this story where it takes place in 1885, where Doc is talking to his kids. So that was pretty cool. And of course, Claire's in there as well, and they have she has like a couple of little lines, and it's just they're kind of there in some of the panels. And I was like, that's really a great way for them to show it off. I will say it starts off, I'm pretty sure the very first line was Great Scott from Doc, so that was really cool. But I love the first story. The second story was also pretty interesting, and that was solely based on Doc Brown, and it was him in college. And we get to see I would assume he's in like his mid-20s. Of course, him being a genius, he was probably in like his early 20s during that time. Um, but it was really cool. It was him at I think it was the California Institute of Technology, and so he's going through and he's trying to figure out why he basically wasn't put on this certain list to have like this to join like this classified group or anything like that takes place through the school. And it was really cool getting to see him kind of talk to who I assume was the principal. He was actually teaching, by the way. He was a teacher, so there's something. I know that's a slight spoiler, but it really plays no part in the story, to be totally honest. But it was really cool. I certainly loved that story, and it had a pretty interesting ending, which actually ties in with something that a character says in the first story. I was like, oh, that's kind of just rumors. And then I read the second story for the first issue, and I was like, oh, that wasn't a rumor. That was like an actual fact. So that really surprised me. I thought that was kind of cool. And once again, I don't want to spoil anything that's in the issue. So I'm, sorry, I have to be so vague. I really do want to talk about all the cool stuff that's in there. Now I might do that once the issue finishes. I'll probably do like just one big video talking about my favorite kind of spoiler stuff. But it's a really cool first issue. I like the first story more than the second one just because it's how they met, and that's just a really cool thing. And the second one really only focuses on Doc Brown before he was even just the Doc. So I certainly love both of them. Each one is done by different artists, so that was pretty cool. I kind of like stories like that sometimes. So the first one has a totally different art style than the second story, and they have like the tiniest little crossover through some of the dialogue towards the end of the first story and the end of the second story. But it was a really good first issue. Really looking forward to getting into the second one. I have both 2 and 3 right here as well. So I'm about to get into both of these right now. And I just have the regular covers for 2 and 3, which I'll most likely just show off in the second and third review videos for those two. But this is a really good first issue. I love this cover so much. There are a lot of different details you guys probably can't make out too well with it being so far away. But it has a lot of cool references just on the cover. And like I said, this is the artist edition, which my goal is, of course, to keep this as pristine as possible. Even though I'll never sell it, I just want to keep it pristine. But on this cover, and that should be good enough. This is, of course, Marty when he's acting like Darth Vader when he's trying to mess with George. The DeLorean is under here. It's actually the flying DeLorean down here. They have Peabody's farm is right here. Where is it at? Fantastic Tales, which there's somewhere in there. I think it's the boy that actually finds Marty, the Peabody son. What's his name? His name's Sherman, because I watched a video on this. They named the father and son Sherman and Peabody after Sherman and Peabody, which I didn't realize until like this year I saw something. So he had Fantastic Tales was the comic the little boy had, and it has a bunch of different little stuff written on it. It has like 1640 Riverside Drive, which I believe, if I remember right, is the address to Doc's house, because that's also in here. But it was really cool. Like, they have a lot of little stuff in this thing. I'm pretty sure. Sorry, I have to just go through it. Yeah, 1640 Riverside Drive is Doc's house. And so it has that, like, just written up there. That I couldn't show even if I zoomed in. It's like, it's done in ink, I assume, but it's meant to look like pencil. So it has stuff on the bottom. It has, like, science fiction theaters written down here. Like, I know that won't possibly show up even if I zoomed in, but it's really cool. It has tons of little stuff on here. It has like Hill Valley, like just written like right here, vertical. It says Hill Valley. It says Calvin Klein. There's a little circle that says Calvin Klein on it. Of course, it looks stained, so it looks like it has coffee stains. Once again, I don't know if it's gonna show up based on my settings for my camera, but there's a lot of little cool details in here, and that's really what made me love it, and that's why I picked up that edition or this edition compared to like the other 8, basically. There were a ton of different versions of the first issue. I don't know if they did that with the other 2, or I guess the other 3 once the last one comes out, but I love the artist edition cover. It's definitely really cool. I saw some others that they had back here in the back of this issue, like, because it's October was artist edition month. They had some really awesome Transformers ones and G.I. Joe, in just all black and white. I was like, man, those look amazing. I would love to have gotten those because they look so cool. But definitely a great first issue. If you haven't picked it up yet, I highly recommend it for sure, especially if you're a huge fan of Back to the Future. It's just really cool. It's nice little bits of information, little stories. And like I say, it says Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines, or Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines, and that's also mentioned in like the ending. There's like a word by, I think it's Robert Gale. I can't remember. I know it's Zemeckis and Gale. I know Gale is the person that's writing or co-writing. Um, but it's some of the answers are going to be from the alternate timelines as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. That might come up in the second one because the cover for the second one is based off of Back to the Future Part 2. And of course that's where the alternate timelines come in at. So we might see some of those in issue 2, which of course I'm going to get to, but definitely recommend picking this up if you haven't already. If you have, I would love to know what you guys thought about the first issue. Of course, if you're going to put any spoilers or anything like that, put spoiler and then hit enter a bunch of times so anyone coming across this doesn't get the stories spoiled for them. But I'd love to know what you guys think about them, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. Um, if you do only have the first issue so far, because I'm you know 3 issues behind, or 2 now since I finished. But if you haven't gotten to issue 2, I definitely want to know what big questions you guys would want answered out of this issue or out of the series in general. I guess even if you haven't read it, I would love to know what big questions you guys want answered. Anything that you've thought of before, because honestly, I never even thought about it. Like outside of the 3 films, I never even thought about how they met or what happened to Doc's house or I think I thought a little bit. The only real question I ever had was how did Doc make the train, and I would assume that has to be in here somewhere. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I believe that's what he was doing in the opening. But it's like the very first, like the first 2 panels. I think he's working on the train. They don't show anything. He just mentions something about gigawatts, and then it goes into the main story. So I don't really know what he was working on, but it was after he had both kids, so I would assume it was him kind of slowly building up on the train and stuff like that. But I'd love to know, like I said, favorite parts, least favorite parts of the first issue, big questions you guys have had about the franchise in general that you would really love to see. So please comment below, let me know, and definitely thanks for watching.